We had the Israeli National Security Minister Ben Gvir says in his interview yesterday, I really hope that a withdrawal from southern Lebanon will not happen. I'm doing everything to convince Benjamin Netanyahu that this will be a mistake. Staying in the field is important. It is not alone. And we need freedom of action in the Dahia. We need freedom of action in Beirut, everywhere. This is the mindset that Iran is against, and it's trying to do its best to go against it. So they want the freedom of action not only in
Basically,
southern
what
part of
he
Lebanon.
means. I mean, you saw his tweet. I hope your viewers have all seen his tweet. I did post it, and he is basically advocating mass slaughter in Lebanon, as he's been doing repeatedly. And when he speaks of freedom of action of Dahia, he means to flatten Dahia, and they've been gloating about flattening southern Lebanon. And when he says every tear of an Israeli mother, there should be a thousand or thousands of weeping
Thousand.
Lebanese, not tear a thousand tears, one tear, thousands weeping. This is a genocidal monster, and he is a key figure in the government. But he's not a fringe. These are not fringe uh, political trends in Israel. This is the mainstream. This is Israeli society. This is what ordinary Israelis believe. The overwhelming majority of them are genocidal based upon their own polls and based upon their own ideology and their own worldview. So Iran is dealing with monsters, and that's why uh, I think that it's quite possible that this deal could collapse within days or weeks. No one should be uh, have any confidence whatsoever that that there will not be uh, war again, and that the Strait of Hormuz will not be shut down again, and that the globe will not be moving towards uh, a a, uh, an economic depression. So really, the question is, what does the United States want to do now? Vance can, boast about his achievements at the negotiating table. Trump can make his threats, but it's not going to change the fact that the United States wants to see
Yeah. It seems that you've lost Professor Marandi. He's going to be back with us. And yesterday we had Donald Trump. He was asked about the case of Lebanon. I don't know if you saw that footage. He was asked about, are you going to force Benjamin Netanyahu to get out of Lebanon? Then he came out and said, uh, how do you know? I'm going to do that. Let's see if Professor Miranda is getting back. Yeah. Basically, what Donald Trump told the reporters yesterday. Yeah, Professor Miranda is back.
okay. Sorry, we should think I should do something about this connection. But in any case, um, the the Iranians are um, are not going to accept violations of the agreement, and they're not going to accept the Americans. I mean, the Americans can spin it any way they want. They can pretend that they're gaining concessions at the negotiating table. The negotiating table, the MOU is very clear, and Iran's demands are clear, and those demands have to be implemented. The Israeli regime has to leave Lebanon and has to stop killing. They killed 2 people today. So there will possibly be consequences on behalf of Hezbollah and other consequences. Who knows? But I think we're moving towards dangerous waters. The United States has to lift the siege. It's done that. The United States has to lift the sanctions. It's done that for now. And the United States has to hand over Iranian assets. Now, the United States can play with words and pretend that Iran is humiliated and that Iran needs food and the people are starving and they're going to buy Iranian American agricultural goods. That money is in US banks. It has already been stolen by the Americans. The fact that it's going to be coming to Iran is a loss to the United States, because the $12 billion and the other 12 billion or $13 billion, that's money that the United States is using for its own economy. It's going to be withdrawn. So if the Qataris go and purchase certain goods from the United States, let's assume that to be the case, still that is a net loss to the US economy because that money will be withdrawn from the US economy. Yes, agricultural goods would be taken, but in general, that the assets, the money, the wealth will be taken to Iran, except for that profit that the that
Yeah.
the farmers make. Let's say.
Yesterday, Donald Trump was asked about Benjamin Netanyahu if he's going to force Benjamin Netanyahu when it comes to the case of Lebanon. Here is what he said.
Hey, here's another beauty. What's this one?
Well,
Here's a real beauty.
earlier
Go
today,
ahead.
the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces are not leaving Lebanon. That is a sticking point.
Who did he
in
tell
these
that to you?
conversations. He said it publicly in Israel.
Well, we're
today.
going to take a look at it.
Well, what would you do to make sure that he doesn't
Well, I'm not going to
sabotage the
tell you
deal?
what I'm going to do, but it gets solved. I'm a problem solver. I get problems solved real fast, including with Bibi. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, he basically says that if he wants, he can put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to withdraw from Lebanon. And he has that
Yeah,
sort of
but the
leverage.
only but we have to keep in mind the only thing that makes Trump talk this way is Iranian pressure. If it wasn't for Iranian pressure, he would not be saying this. He knows very well that the Iranians have leverage, and the Iranians are more than willing to use the leverage. And it's, the issue of Lebanon for Iran is, of course, a moral issue. Lebanon has made huge sacrifices for the Palestinians to save Gaza. And the Iranians are definitely not going to back down. Gaza, of course, is another big problem that the Iranians are going to be discussing during the negotiations if this MOU does not collapse. But the problem, of course, with Gaza is that um, Hamas, under duress and under pressure from the countries in the region, Turkey, the government, Jordan, Egypt, collectively the regimes in the region, they accepted the ceasefire. The problem now, though, is that the ceasefire is being violated, but those countries that endorsed the ceasefire in that meeting in Egypt, where they all participated with Trump, none of them are saying anything. So when Iran wants to intervene and tell the Americans that they have to do something about Gaza, the Americans say, "Well, we've already solved this problem with our partners in Ankara and Cairo and Amman and elsewhere." So that's a problem that the Iranians are going to have to push. But in the case of Lebanon, Iran is very serious, and there is no ceasefire there for Trump to say that that already exists, and there's been a much broader genocidal assault on the country than what we're currently seeing in Gaza, even though they're murdering people every day. So Trump knows that Iran is not going to look away or walk away. And that's the only reason why he says he will speak with Netanyahu, and that he's a problem solver, and that he can apply pressure. That's only because of Iran.
Professor Marandi, you mentioned the case of Palestine, and I think the case of Lebanon together with Palestine. Today, we've heard from the foreign minister of Russia. He said that we all have to be ashamed for not resolving the Palestinian issue. The same day, there was a meeting between the United States and Iran in Switzerland. There was another meeting in Cairo. Pakistan, Turkey, and it was Pakistan, Turkey,
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, and there were four countries, foreign ministers, by the way, all participating in that meeting. And the main issue, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey coming together talking about the deal between Iran and the United States. Basically, the main issue was not only the deal between Iran and the United States, the whole region, which includes the case of Lebanon and Palestine. Do you see, when you see Foreign Minister of Russia talking this way, And do you see any sort of move in the region to make some sort of effort together, all of them together, with the help? Because you mentioned Iran has its limitations when it comes to the case of Palestinian people because of that peace deal and that ceasefire between the United States and these Arab states together with Turkey. And what is that right now? What is the situation on that front?
No, I don't think that those four countries are going to make any move to support the Palestinians. I think they're more concerned, unfortunately, about Iran than they are about Palestine. And I that may be my some may disagree with me, and perhaps, and I hope I'm wrong, but this meeting was not convened in order to save Lebanon or to save Gaza. It was convened in response to the events in the Persian Gulf and the fact that the United States lost the war against Iran. So I don't think that these four countries will be able to work together that well, by the way, and there are many reasons for that. Three of them are, two of them are very facing the very bad economic situation, a very bad economic situation. Saudi Arabia has its own problems, and Turkey has its own problems too. The world today is very different from last year or 2 years ago. It's the things are changing, but this meeting had nothing to do with Gaza or Lebanon. It's basically to think about what's going to happen now that the balance of power has tilted away from the United States and towards the axis of resistance. That doesn't mean that the United States has collapsed and that the Israeli regime is falling apart, but there has been a shift in the balance of power. And I think that is what is of concern to these four countries or these four states.
One of the hopes for many people is that the new leverage that Iran has gained through the Strait of Hormuz in terms of getting maybe getting closer to GCC countries, that may bring sort of mutual understanding when it comes to the acts of resistance, when it comes to the case of Palestine. And today, again, Lavrov, when it comes to the Palestine, he said we should not forget what is happening on the West Bank, where no effort is spared to make sure no Palestinian state is ever established there. And this is, do you think that the new reality of the region in the aftermath, or we are not in the aftermath of the war, but we are having the process of putting an end to the war. But as time goes by, do you think the sort of relationship that would arise because of the war, because of the reality of what has happened so far, would bring some sort of help to Palestinian people?
Well, I'm not sure that we're even nearing the end of the war. We could be moving towards another round of fighting. Everything is possible, even though I know it's very difficult for the United States to wage another war, and it would be catastrophic for the United States to do so. But the Israeli regime is pushing for this, and so we shouldn't really put too much confidence into the notion that this is over. And Iran, of course, does not want to use the Strait of Hormuz uh, to I mean, wants to keep it open as much as possible because it's a key lifeline for the global economy. Billions of people across the world are dependent on it, and so Iran does want business as usual and normalization. But at the end of the day, if the United States does not put aside its current policies, and if it does not move in a more reasonable direction, I see the chances of renewed conflict and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz as quite high. I can't put a percentage on it, but I don't see I really cannot be confident that we're heading towards peace. I agree that the mood across the world has changed and that the Zionist regime is universally despised, and I think this will have consequences. But I don't think that, except for Iran, we're at a stage where anyone else is going to do anything. I mean, the Russian foreign minister's statement is obviously uh, important, but Russia is not going to break off ties with the Israeli regime or sanction the regime, nor is China. Turkey is not going to break off its economic relationship, the transport of energy, which is very key. Egypt is not going to do anything. Leader Jolani is, trying to stay out of this. He's not even talking about regaining the key territories that, thanks to him, were lost to the Israelis after the fall of the Syrian government. So I don't see any real defense for the Palestinians except for the axis of resistance, unfortunately. But and Iran's relatively speaking, Iran's in a stronger position than what it was before. And the United States and the Israeli regime are in a weaker position. But that doesn't mean that this is that 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 the Israeli regime is going to uh, concede Lebanon. I don't see that happening easily unless there's enormous pressure and the Americans recognize that they don't have a way out. And my fear is that the Israelis will increase the in their anger and rage, increase the slaughter in Gaza to feel better about losing Lebanon and to uh, carry out more crimes in the West Bank in order to compensate for the loss in Lebanon. That's my concern right now.
We had the Iranian the head of Iranian parliament together with the foreign minister of Iran going to Oman right after getting back from Switzerland. What is the status of the new mechanism of the Strait of Hormuz? It is that in the process of making the new, defining the new process.
Yes, without a doubt, the Iranians are going to take fees after these 2 months are over, assuming that we get through the 2 months without the MOU collapsing. And they are negotiating with Oman to have to be in full coordination with regards to how to carry out this policy. It's not just about fees; it's also about controlling the Persian Gulf to make sure that it doesn't become another platform for aggression. And Iran has very good relations with Oman because Oman chose not to get involved in the war, unlike the other five countries, um, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, and Bahrain, and the Emirates, and Kuwait, which assisted the United States in its assault on Iran. Oman stayed out. And so Iran does want to prioritize its relationship. And something that you said earlier, and we've discussed this before, the Iranians are negotiating with these five countries. And there has been some success. There has been success in strengthening the relationship. And we saw in the last military conflicts between when the United States would attack Iran and violate the ceasefire, and Iran would strike back in a very heavy-handed way. Iran did not strike the Emirates. It did not strike Saudi Arabia, and it did not strike Qatar. And what it did was it struck U.S. targets in Bahrain and Kuwait, and then on the last occasion in Jordan. So obviously there was a reason, despite the huge U.S. presence, military presence in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Emirates, that Iran did not strike targets in these three countries. So it does show that that the negotiations between Iran and these three countries have had more progress than with the other three that were uh, still in full cooperation with the United States.
I think that's the nightmare for Israel. If something of that sort happening, if they're negotiating, I don't know what is the nature of negotiating, what the talks between the two sides, Iran and GCC countries. Because for such a long time, Professor Marandi, the region was suffering because of this sort of division between Iranians and GCC countries, and Israel was behind all of these sort of policies. They wanted to sabotage everything. You mentioned the case of Qatar just 2 days ago. and Iranian believe
The
Iranians,
explosion,
yeah,
the
the
huge
explosion,
explosion in that gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said the explosion. Maybe Iranian perception is that Israel was behind. It was a false flag operation, something like that. So
Not necessarily a false flag operation. I think that the belief is that the Israelis carried out this attack to punish Qatar for cooperating with Iran and trying to push forward the MOU.